and I'm going to hit record. So all right, we can't get started without our Villages of Kensington representative, Lori Pross. So Lori, there she is. All right. Okay. So first, we're going to meet our panel members here in a moment. But Lori, before we do that, we want to make sure that everybody understands who you are and what Villages of Kensington is.
Okay, well, I'm kind of incidental, so we won't go into that. But Villages of Kensington is a small nonprofit, and it's a village that's been in existence approximately now, I would say about 6 or 7 years. And we're hanging in there, I guess would be the best description. We're trying at this point to relaunch as best we can into the service provision section of what villages do. And Steve has been very instrumental in helping us do that because, you know, it's been very difficult, obviously, with COVID and all the rest. So we've been kind of sleepy for the last year and some, but we've been doing some presentations, and this is one of them. And we're really excited about this one because it's one of the services that we're really, really interested in providing. So want to know all about it. And I'm in hopes that there are lots of people from Villages of Kensington here to listen to what you all can provide. So
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thanks a lot. It's been a lot of fun working with Villages of Kensington and helping you guys with your programming. And I'm delighted at the panel you put together here. I think it's going to be really interesting for our audience. So let's get to know our panel members here. So we've got 3 panel members, Susy Elder Murphy and Susan Blum from Debra Levy Eldercare Associates, and Dr. Amy Schiffman from Jewish Social Service Agency. I know they have tons of stuff to share, but first let's get to know them a little bit better. So let's take the duo down there first, Susy and Susan. You want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and what Debra Levy Eldercare Associates does?
Sure. I'm Susy Elder Murphy, and I'm the owner of Debra Levy Eldercare Associates. And our company's tagline is, "We're like wedding planners for growing older." So we are an aging life care management company, and we have 14 gerontologists, social workers, and RNs that work as aging life care managers with us. And Susan is our director of care management. And maybe you can talk about how long you've been with the company.
Yeah. I've been with Debra Levy Eldercare for 16, going on 17 years now. And I came from a more psychiatric background where I was part of psychotherapy practices and then entered into the world of working with seniors and people with disabilities through a company that provided service in nursing homes.
Great. All right. And then up there on the top, we've got Dr. Amy Schiffman, who is, who I've, just like Susy and Susan, I've known for many years, but Dr. Amy, tell us a little bit about what
Sure.
your background and what you're doing.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are out there and knew me, formerly known as a house call provider, some of you may know that I am now the Chief Medical Officer at JSSA, the Jewish Social Service Agency. And as part of my new role, I oversee the 3 senior serving portions of the agency. And I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit more about JSSA because I think some people just know us as like one thing or another thing. But I oversee the 3 elements of JSSA, which are, we have a private duty home care agency, a hospice, and we have a care management arm that also houses a Holocaust survivors program, Meals on Wheel, and an escorted transportation service. And I look forward to telling all of you about that.
Wow, this is great. Okay, well, I think our panel members here have sort of hatched a plan on how they would like to sort of present their content and jump into Q&A. So Susy, you want to tell us what the agenda is for today?
Sure. I think we were just going to do a little slideshow to help people understand who aging life care managers are, how we help, and then we also have some services that people don't often associate with aging life care management our Well Senior program that's really targeted to people who are planning prior to experiencing any challenges of aging. So I'm happy to jump in, and we're going to do a brief PowerPoint. Happy to answer questions, and then Amy was going to do her PowerPoint and then leave time at the end for
Great.
questions for all of us.
Yeah, and what I would say to the audience is it's just like if questions come up while either Susie or Susan or Dr. Amy is talking, just type in your questions and we'll get to them. That's one of the cool things about this platform is we don't have to raise our hand for 40 minutes waiting to get called on. So what I think we're going to do here to maximize your screen is I'm going to drop behind the curtain and I'm going to put Lori behind the curtain as well. And Amy, if you want to tuck yourselves behind there while Susie and Susan are talking, then that'll maximize your screen there when you're sharing your PowerPoint there, Susie and Susan.
Okay. Is that?
There we go. And then just
okay.
Click that. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, so I always like to start with some humor in our presentations. And I think that we can all of us who are aging, which we all are from the moment of birth, can agree with the sentiment that the problem with doing things to prolong your life is that all the extra years come at the end when you're old. So the evolution of the aging life care management profession. So some of you may know of us as geriatric care managers. That profession really began in the mid-1980s as the greatest generation started to age, and attorneys realized they didn't know all of the things that they could do to help people, and the questions they were being asked were really beyond their scope. So the attorneys started asking social workers to help their clients, and gradually this new profession of geriatric care management was born. And then in 2014, we rebranded, and we're now known as the Aging Life Care Association, and our association's tagline is, "We're the experts in aging well." And to be an aging life care manager, you have to go through a certification process. There often are social workers, but also nurses. We have gerontologists on our team, and therapists as well. Could come from an occupational therapy background, or psychotherapy, or physical therapy background. And we're all experts in our own geographic region about the resources that people may need to help support them as they are facing challenges of aging. One of the things that sets us apart from other people who might be helping with decision making is that we have a very strong code of ethics. And so we don't have a financial relationship with any resource that we recommend to our clients. We're paid by them to give them the best advice for their problems. And we don't accept any fees from anyone outside of for making a referral. The other thing that sets an aging life care manager apart from, you may have had a case manager if you were in the hospital, or you have a chronic illness, is aging life care management is really interdisciplinary. So it brings all of these different disciplines together. So we're not just looking at your medical care, but at making sure you have your legal paperwork, your estate planning in order. We're advocating for you. We know about the local resources. We're able to communicate with your family and sometimes facilitate family meetings. We may be looking at housing. We're definitely looking at, what does your financial picture look like? What can you afford? Who's going to pay for the care that you need? So we're working in an interdisciplinary way, and we're often part of a care team along with, say, a financial planner and a primary care physician and specialists and home care companies and the other specialists that you may have working in your life. Just a profile of aging life care managers as a group. There's over 2,000 of us across the country. Most of us are in our 50s and 60s, but we are recruiting younger care managers into our practices, which I'm very excited about. Again, often social workers, psychologists, therapists, but could also be more of a medical background. And some of us also may have an experience or also own a home care company. For our company, we just do care management, although we do also have a concierge companion program, Debbie's Angels. And mainly we enjoy working with our clients, helping them solve problems and helping them get into the situation that's the right one for them, whether it's remaining at home with support or finding an alternate place to call home. A lot of people are going to need help. So a lot of our profession, but related professions such as home care, are driven by the fact that so many of the baby boom generation are turning 65 every day. And right now, the demographics and the statistics, you know, anyone who's a baby boomer now after the age of 65, we have more than a 70% chance of needing help with some of the activities of daily living, such as dressing, bathing, things like that. So we're here as those kinds of changes emerge. And this screen is a little bit complicated. Susan's going to go into it a little bit about how we might help problem solve if you're waiting until something comes up. Maybe it's a fall.
Mm-hmm. And often it is a crisis that sends people to us, not all the time, but there then are lots of questions. Do you have a will? Do you have advance directives? What are you going to do if you can't live in your house anymore? Or if you start having difficulties moving around? Are you running out of money? So all of these, as you can see from this complicated screen, creates other questions. And one of the things that we do is try to help sort all of that out and come up with a roadmap so that people can have a clear idea of what they need to do, what the resources are, and who to turn to.
And as you can see, there are lots of options. If you've been driving around Montgomery County at all, you've been seeing assisted living and memory care popping up like Starbucks everywhere. So, you know, is that right for you? What does that mean? Should you be aging at home? What is co-housing? What help do you need, and how much is it going to cost? These are all questions that come to us as aging life care managers. Our company, we work also a lot with seniors who are being a little more proactive. And we have both our Well Senior program, and that's for people who are basically self-referring and saying, I don't need help yet, but if I did need help, I want to know who would be there to help me. During the pandemic, the enrollment in that program basically doubled as people realized I could get sick and I don't know who would pick up my mail, who would feed my cat, who would make sure my bills are being paid. And so we do have people enrolling in the Well Senior program where they're forming a relationship proactively. We're offering them a lot of resources so that they can plan in case there's an emergency, and then we're there if something comes up. One couple that we worked with recently, they were both fine. Everything was in their house, very accessible if something changed. And then the wife needed to have a hip replacement surgery, so it was a planned surgery. But she was the cook for the family, and she was a fabulous gourmet cook. I asked her what was her specialty, and she just basically said, everything, anything I want to cook. And so part of her pre-op planning was not just, making sure she had the right equipment and the right surgeon and all of those kinds of things, but also who was going to deliver gourmet meals to her and her husband until she could get up and start cooking again. And so that's what we helped her with, that piece, as well as getting her connected with therapy and the other more traditional support so that she got through that surgery successfully. We also recently learned about a new program called Get Careful. That's a very interesting program. That's a you pay by subscription, and it's a financial monitoring device. So they know what your current financial patterns are like, how much money goes into your account each month, and how much you generally spend, so that if something unusual happens, they can send out an alert and to to you and to whichever financial power of attorney or advisor you have. Just a way, and they're not able to get into your accounts. They just send you alerts if there's unusual activity. Very interesting product that I think a lot of people are really going to be interested in having, especially during this age when things can get hacked into so easily. Oops. We also offer help to people in terms of understanding what insurance is going to cost. And did I skip a slide here? I'm having a little problem getting my slides to advance. Shoot. Well, let me go back up. Sorry.
These are.
Here we go. Are we back? Yep.
Yep.
So, Susan, you want to talk a little bit about the costs that can be involved if you need help at home?
So, well, if you need help at home, it can range between $25 and $35 an hour. And costs have gone up during this past year with the pandemic as home care companies have had to take on additional costs for testing and PPE. The cost to have an awake caregiver in your home 24/7 is between $175,000 and $306,600. The costs for assisted living range quite a bit per month depending on the settings, and we can talk more about this in questions, but there are lots of different types of settings, from small group homes to larger communities, and they can range from $3,500 to $18,000 per month. That comes out to about $42,000 to $216,000 per year. And if someone needs skilled nursing, that can be about $14,000 a month or more, depending on where it is and whether you're in a private room or semi-private. So anywhere from $168,000 a year. Some people eventually will qualify for Medicaid, and that's a whole other process. But, you know, paying for it is a challenge, and I think a lot of people have assumed that Medicare is going to cover, but Medicare only covers a small part of long-term care, and that's typically in rehab and skilled nursing. So that's one of the things that we talk to people about is how else can they pay for these services, whether it's long-term care insurance, many people have that and that can help, or veterans benefits. Some people do reverse mortgages or use life insurance policies. So there are lots of options, but many people end up paying privately.
Whenever I have to talk about Medicare, I also need to inject again a little bit of humor into the conversation. Truth and enlightenment are on another peak. This guru only does Medicare explanations, which many of us could use. So Medicare A, for those of you who are already on Medicare, your Medicare A covers hospital stays and potentially a rehab stay. Prior to the pandemic, you needed to have a qualifying hospital stay that lasted at least 3 nights. During COVID, now that's been waived. So even if you're overnight in the hospital, you can discharge to a rehab facility, and that will be covered by your Medicare A benefit. And in Montgomery County, the hospitals have all joined together. Most of you have probably heard about the hospital readmission program, and if you go back to the hospital within so many days, that Medicare won't pay that second hospital. So Montgomery County, all of our hospitals work together, and they have some navigators to help make sure that you have the support you need when you go back home. It could be making sure you have that prescription delivered or some meals delivered. Unfortunately, they call that individual person something different in each of the hospitals, but you can always ask for a transition person if you are inpatient in a hospital and want some support to make sure your discharge is successful. Medicare is paying for acute care, that hospital care, and then your recovery, but it doesn't pay for that long-term custodial care. That's what ends up being covered by private pay, your long-term care insurance, perhaps your veterans benefits. And so then how do you decide whether or not it's best for you to remain and age in place in your home, or whether you want to consider another setting? So we often will work with an occupational therapist or aging in place expert to walk through your home and just see, could it be made accessible if you were in a wheelchair? What would be involved in doing that? I once worked with a couple and they were both professors, and they must have had 20,000, 30,000, every room had wall to ceiling bookshelves. But they lived in an old house in Georgetown, and with stairs upstairs to the bathroom, and they went back and forth. They visited a number of communities, and ultimately they decided they loved their home. There was sort of an in-law apartment that a caregiver could move into, and they didn't mind the construction to put in things like chair lifts and things like that that would make their house accessible, and they're going to stay there until the end of their lives and leave their sons to deal with their tens and tens of thousands of books. So we work with people to go through those kinds of decisions. And then, of course, we always want to bring in your financial advisor to look at all of the sources of income that you're bringing in and what your lifestyle preference is. If you're really a loner, you may not want to be in a community where there are a lot of other people. On the other hand, you may want to stay at home. You love your house, but you realize you could be isolated there if the weather is bad and you can't get out. So there's lots of different factors that you need to take into account as you make this decision about where you want to age. And this is my last cartoon of the presentation. It's one of my favorites because many people will line up for the Fountain of Youth. But what I find is that the people who really go out and come to talks like this, they're lined up for the Fountain of Smart. They're getting themselves educated to figure out what's going to be the best solution for them as they face the challenges of aging, which is why we say we're like wedding planners for growing older.
Great. That was great, Susie and Susan. And we've got, let's see. Okay, well, let's jump into Amy's discussion, and then we'll go through any questions that have come in. And just a reminder to the audience, if you've got any questions for our care manager team or Dr. Amy, just type them in and we'll make sure to get to them all before our little journey is done. And I'm going to tuck Susie and Susan behind the curtain there so that we can check out Dr. Amy's slides. And Dr. Amy, take it away.
Okay, so hang on one second. I'm just going to do one little thing here to make sure I actually know where I am on my computer. Of course, technology just wants to cooperate instantaneously. Hang on one second. Do you guys see the presentation?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great. All right, well, let's just do it then. Okay, so the goal of today's presentation is to give everybody a broad overview of JSSA. And for those of you who are not familiar with JSSA, it is probably more than you even know, because I came on as the chief medical officer and sat through the first 3 weeks going, we do that? Oh my gosh, and we do this, and we do that, and we do the other thing. In a broad stroke, JSSA is a nonprofit human services organization that is based in Jewish culture of Tikkun Olam, which is to heal the world. We do a lot of things under the roof. We take care of more than just Jewish folks. In fact, less than 30% of our clients are Jewish. But we continue to maintain.
What's that? Come in, please.
we continue to maintain our Jewish values, and this permeates throughout all of the agency. So I'm gonna take a second and I guess I need to make the screen big. Did it get big yet? Aha, there we go. So what does JSSA do? Yeah, that look okay? Great. Okay, so what does JSSA do? So we have some big departments, and I'm going to go through those. We have a mental health services department, which serves mental health for all ages. From elementary school kids, we have a program in MCPS called Minecraft, all the way up to senior mental health services. We do not do in-home, but we do have nurse practitioners and psychiatrists who do geriatric psychiatry and therapy. So that's something that a lot of folks are not familiar with. You can always call and do an intake with our mental health services group, and they will find somebody to help. We have a specialized employment program for those with adult autism. We place those who are interested in working in lots of different industries throughout the county, throughout the DMV area, so that they have an opportunity to live life to its fullest. We also have a care management program. We do elder care consults as well. We work with Montgomery County as well for folks who end up in the care management program through Montgomery County. We are a subcontractor with them. And we also are the only Holocaust survivors program in the area. And anybody who's particularly interested in this, I'm more than happy to dive into more details after this presentation. We have the largest, like I said, the only, but also one of the largest Holocaust survivors programs in the area. The closest one is in Baltimore. And it is one of the most amazing programs. It provides through the German government's claims conference, which is the organization that was formed after the Holocaust to provide reparations, provides robust case management for Holocaust survivors, as well as home care, so to help folks stay independent in their home as long as they can. We also have Premier Home Care, which thank you, Susie and Susan, for explaining how much that will cost as you move forward. But it is a private duty agency. We provide certified nursing assistants and certified medical technicians who can go in and give medications, as well as do personal care, also known as custodial care. I don't love that word, but personal care. And then we have the hospice program, which many of you are familiar with. This is for end-of-life care. And tucked into this program is something called transitions, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more as I get through the rest of the presentation. So let's start with Premier Home Care. Premier Home Care, as I said before, is private duty. It is not generally covered by insurance. And when I say insurance, I mean Medicare. So just for those of you who are, a little bit more well-versed, or who want to be a little bit more well-versed, and to sort of build a little bit upon what you already just heard, Medicare, original Medicare, does not pay for home care. If you are under a Part A skilled nursing type of arrangement, because you just came out of the hospital, let's just say, you could get up to 45 minutes twice a week. So that's nothing, right? Like the amount of care that most people need in their home is 4 hours a day up to 24 hours a day. And it's ranging between $25 and $35 per hour for that type of care. One exception to the insurance rule is actually long-term care. And I will add to that moving forward, some of these insurance companies known as Medicare Advantage companies are going to be providing up to 120 hours of private duty care per year to some of the offerings that they have. That's about $3,000 worth of home care. It's not a tremendous amount, but it could be the type of thing that would get somebody out of the hospital, get you home with 30 hours a week of home care for a month, that type of thing. But in general, this is all out of pocket costs. So when I'm training staff and I have outreach programs, I tell everybody to save their shekels, because you really just you can't possibly anticipate the costs of aging in place while we sit here and we're very functional. And of course, we work on an hourly rate basis. So the more time you have somebody in your home, the more it costs. I want to touch briefly on our Holocaust survivor program. It is a need-based program. You have to meet some general financial needs, but it is robust care management. There's about 50 clients per care manager. And this particular area, we have mostly Russian-speaking clients, but we're certainly not exclusive. There are thousands of Holocaust survivors who probably could take advantage of this program throughout the DMV area. And we don't market this. So this is one of the first times I think anyone's ever come out and said, ta-da, we have a Holocaust survivors program. So if there's any Holocaust survivors that you are aware of that may not have known about this, please reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to hook you guys up with our Holocaust survivors program. So like I said, the German government through an organization called the Claims Conference pays out a significant amount of money to help aging Holocaust survivors stay independent in their homes. The word independent used in quotation marks, because once you start having home care, you're not as independent as you were, but many clients do have just a small amount of home care, but we have some that are getting 160 hours a week, which is basically 24/7 care 7 days a week. And so that is fully paid for under the Holocaust survivors program based on need and functional status. We have a Meals on Wheels program. We have the only kosher Meals on Wheels program in Montgomery County. The meals are prepared in the Hebrew home kitchen, and every single day, 5 days a week during Monday through Friday, our Meals on Wheels recipients receive 2 meals, a lunch and a dinner. So it is free of charge. And there is currently, due to Montgomery County rules, there is no income requirement. Okay, Brenner Home Care. So we, under the same sort of umbrella of our senior services, we also have something called, that shouldn't say Brenner Home Care, that should say Brenner Transportation. It is door-through-door transportation to doctor's appointments. Our drivers in full PPE will go and get you from inside your home, take you out to a transportation van, get you through the doctor's office door, like into the building, up the escalator, through the doctor's door, and wait in the waiting room for your doctor's appointment, and then take you back home. And now I'm going to hit on hospice. So hospice, for most folks, they think of it as like the absolute end of life. You actually qualify under hospice if a doctor, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant feels as though you have less than 6 months to live. This is particularly important for those with cancer, neurological diseases like dementia. People can stay in hospice for many, many months, and the services are very robust. When you go into hospice, a lot of really wonderful things happen. First of all, you're part of a care team that is probably, and I say this all the time, it's the greatest thing that Medicare has ever figured out to do. It is completely free of charge. Your medical equipment is paid for. Your medications are paid for. You have a social worker, a nurse, a chaplain, another physician, a medical director that are all part of your team. There's a tremendous amount of support. That nurse will come, 2 or 3 times a week just to check in on you. Huge amounts of communication, particularly when there's difficult family situations. Hospice is often really good at bridging some of those gaps. Like I said, it is one of the most wonderful things that Medicare does. It is often used too late. Folks often anecdotally will say, gosh, I wish I, figured to do this earlier. So if you have a loved one who is struggling with some end of life issues, it's certainly worth it to call. We do informational visits as well as just general admissions, and we wear full PPE as needed. We were the first hospice in the area to start taking care of COVID patients, and recently we were just found to be the highest ranking hospice in Montgomery County. So we have wonderful nurses. This is a pretty impressive group, quite honestly. When everybody else was running out of the building, they were running in. And I'm humbled to be part of this team. And then we have transitions. Transitions is a part of hospice. It's not specifically palliative. Like when you think of palliative care, you think of like a team-based approach with a physician. Hopefully we're heading that way. But at the moment, Transitions is a free program that is offered to folks who are not hospice ready or eligible. People are usually living from 12 to 24 months with serious illness. They get a nurse manager that comes and evaluates how they're doing. And they get checked in on between 1 and 2 times per month. In times of non-pandemic, volunteers are a big part of that. Otherwise, it's usually works hand in hand with hospice. So when the nurses think, okay, somebody might qualify for hospice, they will work with the family, work with the physician to help smooth that road. And like I said, that's a totally free program. And if you're interested in that, you would go through the hospice admissions department and they would get you hooked up into Transitions. And that is all of my presentation currently. I would like to leave the rest of it up to Q&A and be sure to answer everybody else's questions.
I love it. All right. Well, let's bring back on Susy and Susan onto the screen here. I'm asking you to share your video. Okay, great. Okay, let's see. Well, we've got a couple of hands raised. This could be by mistake, but I'm going to go ahead and allow Lynn and Keisha to talk if that's not a mistake and you truly had a question to ask. And then I'm going to take a peek here at some questions. Okay, let's see. What is the contact information for Dr. Amy Schiffman? Amy, if you want to drop that in chat, that would be great. And that's not bad for Susy and Susan to do as well. And let's see if Lynn and Keisha had a question. Guys, you can just unmute yourself. And let me see, I saw a question in here earlier. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Lori has a question. And out of curiosity, I think this is a good one because we're talking about a village, is what would you recommend the first step for a village to present to their membership your services? I guess this is the first step, doing one of these.
I just was going to say, well, I think I've taken step 1. If there is something specific that I've gone through that like is a specialty area, let me know. Otherwise, I'm happy to, gather together anything else that you might need in terms of advertising, trifolds or whatever, but.
Yep, actually, here we go. Okay, please address, this is from Paula. Please address the issue of those who have no or uninvolved adult children or few, if any, relatives. Families have gotten smaller, fewer children who may live far away, or no children, increasing numbers, or single, divorced, widowed, childless. And great question, and one I know that is super valuable for aging life care managers.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of seniors who don't have family or their family is far away. We have one client where her son lives in Thailand for half of the year and then works at Ocean City, and it's like works 20 hours a day when he's on this side of the globe. And so for all intents and purposes, she doesn't really have a family member she can rely on. And that's why she enrolled in our Well Senior program, so that if something came up, she knew she had somebody who would be local who could step in. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our clients don't have family or their family is far away. We are in communication with family again around the globe. We have a responsible party who lived in, I think it was Australia or New Zealand for many years while we managed the care of their family member here, and she has finally relocated closer. But even if they're in the same neighborhood, we find that sometimes families are very busy with their own lives, their own families, their children, and they're not able to provide all of the support that their parents need. So we work with folks who do have families, but also we very frequently work with folks where their family's far away, or they're single and they don't have a biological family they can rely on.
Great. That's great. Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I'm always referring to aging life care managers. Let's see.
And one of the things, Steve, that comes up sometimes with those folks who don't have biological family members they can rely on is they're looking for someone to be a decision maker for them, whether it's financial or medical power of attorney. And that's another thing that we can help people do, is identify someone that they feel comfortable being in that decision-making role. Great.
Okay, the questions are coming through like crazy now. So we've got, but first it looks like Lynn, your mic is undone if you had a question.
Oh, Mike.
Was that by accident?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a question. I'm wondering, can you select a primary care physician to be an intermediary between the client and the Debra Levy group?
So can you explain what you mean by intermediary?
Well, okay, if you have a medical agent who you don't know may or may not be reliable, can the doc, I mean, if there's something going on, can I contact my doctor and then have the doctor contact Debra Levy?
Yes, we work very closely with physicians, and all of our clients sign a release of information so that we can talk to them at any time, get records, help you understand what the treatment plan is. So yes, we work very closely with people's primary care physician.
Yeah, and you've got a physician here right next to you on the screen. Amy, Dr. Amy, have you ever had sort of an interaction like that with your client and an aging life care manager?
All the time.
Okay.
the two lovely ladies in the box next to me, I worked very closely with them when we would have shared, they would be called clients. To us, they were patients. Yes, that was a very common scenario.
Great. Okay, so let's see. Robin Hall says, both of your programs are amazing. For JSSA or JSSA, do you have referrals for Virginia that offer what you all do?
Okay, so that again is a great question. So we do some elder care consults in Virginia, but in general, and we do have Holocaust survivors in Virginia. But in general, and I'm just going to keep tripping over myself. Yes, we do mental health services in Virginia. I'm like going to say, no, we don't. Oh, but yes, we have some services in Virginia, and we do work with some assisted living facilities in Virginia currently, providing some tuck-in services for new residents, making sure that they are able to settle in, and that's through both our mental health as well as our case management group. We do not currently have a hospice there. Stay tuned. We do not currently provide private duty there, but I'm happy to refer you to somebody if you're specifically interested in private duty in that area.
Great. Sharon Parver, a member of Villages of Kensington, says, what advice do you have for adult children who are trying to introduce the idea of working with an aging life care manager and meet resistance from their older parent?
Yeah, so if I had a nickel for every time I was asked that question, I'd probably be retired by now. So it really is pretty much the most common question that we get. We are sometimes called by spouses for help with a spouse, but most often it's the adult children who are calling us and they're not sure what to do. And often, just explaining to them that this is the expert that you turn to when you start to face challenges of growing older, or you want to be proactive, is that there might start to be changes as you grow older. And I often relate it to, if you were going to sell your house, you wouldn't just put a sign out in the front yard, for sale, somebody walks up and says, oh, that's a nice house. Can I give you $100,000? Sure, give me a check, shake hands, we're good. You would never do that. You'd interview a few real estate agents, you'd look at what the market is, and you'd get an expert who would give you all of this advice about what is the smartest way to do this and how much money you should ask and all of those kinds of things. And we're sort of there, we're that expert that you can go to in terms of, should I stay home? What would that look like? How much would it cost? Should I move? What would that look like? What would that cost? And we work very much as like a consultant, like an attorney. So we bill for our time. And so you only get as much service as you want to purchase. Our minimum is an hour. And our maximum is we have families that we have worked with for over 20 years. We have half a dozen or so families now that we're serving the second generation. We took care of their parents, aunts and uncles, and now we're taking care of the adult children.
That's great.
I just wanted to add, Steve, that sometimes we have families in this situation and they'll just decide to talk for an hour with one of us to kind of go through that process and for us to give them for us to get a better idea of what they're dealing with and then to help them figure out how we can engage with their parents.
Great.
I kind of want to add to that because where I used to sit in my house calls practice, I kind of sort of see the whole ecosystem of senior care to be it's definitely a network. And if one of my nurse practitioners or myself would identify somebody that was clearly having a lot of trouble navigating whatever system they were trying to navigate, be it moving to an assisted living, be it staying at home, being, somebody lives far away, whatever it might be, it was so easy to know what they needed, but sometimes so hard to convince them to do that. Mm-hmm. So I will give you a few nickels and then you can retire because I got
let's see, Joan Green has a bunch of questions / comments, but I think one thing that's pretty cool is she says, my mother-in-law takes advantage of the Holocaust Survivor Program and it's wonderful. But she asks, is the transition program just for people aging in place, or is it also available for someone who's in an assisted living program?
Great question. No, our transitions program does go into assisted living. Yep. Okay.
And then she says, any chance that the Holocaust Survivor Program could offer benefits for people who are going into assisted living?
So this extends so very, very high above my pay grade. At the current time, and this can always change, the claims conference does not offer money to folks who are in long-term care. I don't want to say that I know that it's coming because I really don't, but I have heard that there may be opportunities to use some of that money for long-term care or at least take care of people who are in long-term care. I don't know if the home care dollars will ever be able to be used for that in the foreseeable future. But certainly asking, you probably know who Deborah Adler is, and she is the head of our Holocaust Survivors Program. Please don't hesitate. If you don't have her email, reach out to me and I will get you in contact with her and you can ask those questions to her directly.
Great. And then somebody asks, is there a kosher Meals on Wheels program via Meals on Wheels of Central Maryland that serves Montco? I guess it sounds like you're the only.
So this is this has been what we've been told by all of Montgomery County and the Meals on Wheels funded programs is that Meals on Wheels program Central Maryland does not have kosher, that JSSA is the only kosher Meals on Wheels program.
Okay, great. Now, let's see, Lori Pross with Villages of Kensington can you comment on nonprofit and for-profit hospices? And obviously you're with a nonprofit hospice, so I guess we'll have an asterisk that there's
implicit bias.
Yeah.
Fine. Conflict of interest. Yeah. So I'd be happy to go into that. So Medicare has a standard set of rules by which hospices, I always jokingly call them hospi, must operate. They are very specific. You must have this many visits from a nurse, this many visits from a social worker, this much this, and this much that. And what I will tell you is that for-profit hospices, look very carefully at what the minimum Medicare requirements are and meet them, right? They will meet those minimum Medicare requirements. In general, nonprofit hospices have endowments and receive money to support other services. And so you usually end up getting more than the Medicare permitted amounts. That is my basic take on all of that. I mean, I think if you look at most of the nonprofit hospices, they typically have a board that, you know, has governance and has goals and mission and all this other kind of stuff. If you go to a for-profit hospice, it's very transactional and service driven. It doesn't mean it doesn't provide good care. In fact, you might get great care. It also depends on where you're at. For example, I can't speak for what it currently is, but at one point, Heartland Hospice was owned by Manor Care. So Heartland Hospice was one of the primary servers within Manor Care facilities. That included Arden Courts, which is a memory care facility. So there are numerous competing interests for for-profit hospices. They have to pay taxes on the money that they earn. You know, the difference is that if a nonprofit hospice makes money in general, it goes back into services.
And I will say that's a great explanation, Amy, but I also will say that everybody who is qualified for hospice has choice of hospice.
Yes.
And so sometimes if you're in a community, say, they may have a strong relationship, or perhaps a hospice that is a subsidiary of that company, and they will encourage you towards that hospice. But you always have choice of hospice as the client, or if you have to be making a decision for your loved one, you can always interview more than one hospice before deciding who you want to have care for your family member or yourself.
Great. Okay, I'm just letting people know we are winding down here. We got 6 minutes till the top of the hour, but we got another question that popped in, and that says, what's the best way to begin to forge a relationship for the future with care managers?
So I would say really through our Well Senior program that's run by our staff gerontologist, Bree Baldwin. And so the process for that is pretty simple. We have an intake questionnaire where we gather information about who your emergency contacts are, chronic conditions you may have, medications that you take, and who are your emergency contacts, whether that's a financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney. And then we do in-person or virtual assessments. And then we do quarterly calls just to check in and see how things are going. If there's a problem, then we'll start to provide care management service, such as you got a new diagnosis and you want a second opinion. And then the only rule really to our Well Senior program is that we lay eyes on you once a year. Again, now with the pandemic and many people being able to do video calls, it could be by Zoom. But if we're going to come see you in the hospital after an accident and they say, well, you know, what's wrong with her? She doesn't seem to be speaking. We don't want to say, well, when I saw her 5 years ago, she was talking fine. So we really want to be up to date on how you're doing, what your current medical condition is, so that we can respond appropriately if you do have a change in your condition.
Great. All right. Well, I'm taking a glance at the chat and the Q&A, and it looks like we covered a lot of ground. Let me ask Lori Prost to come on from Villages of Kensington again to say some farewell words of wisdom. And I think we can wrap things up here. But Lori, pretty good discussion, huh?
This was wonderful. And also a little bit of Old Home Week with Susan and Amy, also the connection. So
absolutely.
This is wonderful. This has been great. I actually put in a little comment. I guess really what I wanted to know is what the second step is for Villages, because clearly this was the first step. So I got the first step right. What do we do next?
Well, I think often, you know, people want to know more about a more specific area, such as understanding the MOLS, the medical orders of life-sustaining treatment, or understanding advanced directives. So we often come and do a more intensive talk about something very specific, and that's when questions start to come up about how will I do this and how will I do that. You know, we're really resources to the families that we work with. We have, you know, in addition to, of course, getting our clients to the doctor, coordinating their care at home, we've also helped, you know, manage a composting toilet and gotten pets to vets, and, you know, found services that were needed so that somebody could remain at home, you know, if that's what they choose. For folks who have long-term care insurance, they also often hire us just for an hour to read that policy, review it, and understand what it will cover. I read one recently. The woman had like $7,000 a year in care management services paid for by her long-term care insurance policy, and her daily benefit could be used for pet walkers and gardening. Like, she's like, I knew I had a good policy, but I had no idea that I could get these kinds of things paid for with the insurance that I've been paying on for all of these years. So that's, you know, they're really, we're wedding planners for growing older. We look at all of those different pieces and help people put it together. So I think, you know, as you talk to your membership, if there are topics of particular interest, then we can really dive into the weeds, just as I know, you know, Amy could do a deep dive into questions about hospice and palliative care and what the differences are. So I think this is that general
also will be some Holocaust survivors that we don't know about.
So anybody who's on this call, I've put my email into the chat.
Okay.
I am your resource. I will not necessarily be able to answer your question, but I will most certainly push it along to the person who can.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
All right.
Thank you very much. Very much. It's been wonderful.
Well, this is great, guys. We recorded this, so we will be uploading it and emailing it out to everybody who registered. And want to thank Villages of Kensington for putting together such a great panel. And we'll see what we have in store for you next month with Villages of Kensington.
Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so
Everybody.